Hello everyone, this is Dad Engineer Guy. Welcome to the third lecture of Special Theory of Relativity. In the last class, we talked about the concept of time interval, and then we talked about the time dilation equation. Last class, I think there was a minor mistake made by me that I might have said that the improper time interval is smaller than the proper time interval by a factor of gamma. Actually, it is greater than the proper time interval by a factor of gamma. I think that got edited in that video. So moving on, now we have been learning about time dilation. As a consequence, we have not seen it in real life, right? Most of us have not experienced time dilation in real life. So in order to remove this, it was scientifically proven that time dilation indeed exists. We did two experiments, one involving in the microscopic world and another involving in the macroscopic world, right? So let us talk about the microscopic world. Examples of time dilation. Examples of time dilation. So what was the first example? Was that for the microscopic clocks. Microscopic clocks. Now we have in the earlier classes we learned about a particle called pion, which was used to determine that the Maxwell's postulate that speed of light is a universal constant holds true, right? So what we actually did in that is that we took the pion at rest and calculated how much beta rays how much beta rays are emitted by it by what speed. Then we calculated it at moving it by a speed of 0.9975 times the speed of light. And then we found out that the beta rays emitted were almost of the same speed, that is the speed of light. Now we talk about another particle called muon. 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 Now what this guy does is that it is a very radioactive particle. First of all, it is very radioactive. It is very radioactive. Radioactive. And it decays after 2.200 microseconds. It decays after 2.200 microseconds. Right? I wrote this 00 again in order to match it with the significant figures configuration. Okay. So it decays after 2.200 microseconds. So what I do is that I put two clocks. Let's say there is a muon, a particle like this, called muon, and I have a clock in my laboratory. Right? It is set at t equal to 0. Right? Then I keep this muon for decaying. So I start the timer at t equal to 0 and muon start decaying. Then with respect to the laboratory, the clocks which are situated in the laboratory, the time interval after 2.2 microseconds, it gets completely decayed. Right? So what kind of time interval is this? Is this a proper time interval or an improper time interval? So this is a proper time interval, right? Because your event, that is the decaying of muon, is happening at the same place with respect to the laboratory, right? And your time is used by only one clock, right? Time has been shown by only one clock. That's why it is a proper time interval. Now what I will do is that I will move this muon with speed of approximately the speed of light, and then you kept your observation clock with you and you moved it in such a way that the clock is at rest with respect to this muon, right? So you move the clock and absolutely time will get dilated. So at t equal to 0, you kept it here, and at t equal to something, you will observe this value to be decaying, right? To calculate this t. Now, how will you calculate? So you know uh, the time dilation equation, that the improper time interval is gamma times the proper time interval. T dash equal to gamma times T naught. T naught is 2.2 microseconds. You need to calculate gamma. Now gamma will be 1 upon under root of 1 minus V by C whole square. So this will be 1 upon under root of 1 minus v is 0.994 times c, 0.994 times speed of light, divided by the speed of light whole square, and this will get cancelled, right? Cc will get cancelled, and this value comes out to be 28.87. You can check it with a calculator. This value comes out to be 28.87, right? Now you got to calculate T dash, right? T dash, that is the dilated time that you will experience. So T dash equal to gamma times 28.87 times T naught. T naught is 2.2 microseconds. 2.2 microseconds, and this value will come out to be 63.51 microseconds, right? Earlier it was 2.2 microseconds in a reference frame, in the rest frame, right? In the rest frame, or you can call it a proper time interval, because the events, that is the decaying of the muon, happened at the same place. Now you are moving it with respect to the laboratory at a speed of 0.994 times the speed of light. So you need to move your clock along with you so that you get a dilated time, right? This is the experiment to check time dilation, whether time dilation is true or not in the microscopic clock. Now this value and this value, if you check the percentage change in time, percentage changes in time is the final time minus initial time divided by the final time. So final time is 63.51 minus 2.2 divided by 63.51, and then you multiply it by 100 in order to get it in percentage, right? This is clear, right? Final minus initial divided by final, percentage change. So this will come out to be almost approximately 96%. 96% change. That means time has been changed by 96%. That means time dilation indeed works in the microscopic world, right? Now let's talk about the macroscopic example of time dilation. Macroscopic clocks. That does time dilation work for macroscopic objects? Macroscopic clocks. Now this is going to be a very lengthy process, as you can observe, because if you are trying to match the clocks in the macroscopic world, then you need to carry heavy clocks all around the world in order to calculate whether time dilation works or not. Because see, what happens in the microscopic world is that atoms are very the radioactive elements are very radioactive, right? They have a very short half-life, like half-life in microseconds. As we observed in the case of muon, it was just 2.2 microseconds. It is a very small time. But when you go into the macroscopic world, there are going to be difficulties, right? Nevertheless, there was this experiment made by, I guess, right source, University of Maryland. They took clocks, big clocks, in aeroplanes and flew it around the world in order to check and tried to check the time dilation that worked in that clocks, right? So they had this clock at let's say some place, like let's say they have this clock at place P1, and then they have, this is a stationary clock, right? And then they have another clock at place P2, another stationary clock. And they checked how much time got passed in both of these, and then they moved an aeroplane with a clock carrying in it, and then they calculated that this time was indeed dilated as compared to this time. See, this is a proper time interval, right? And this is an improper time interval. So this time got dilated instead of this. So yeah, time dilation also works in the macroscopic world, although it is quite difficult to show that it works, because you need high equipment and high precision equipment, right? There has to be minimized error in that. So these were the two examples how time dilation actually worked in real life. So let's move on to a problem on time dilation. The problem states that a starship passes Earth at a speed of √3/2 times c. Person inside the starship records that 20 years have passed inside the ship. How many years might have passed on the Earth in that time? Now, before analyzing this problem, you need to figure out that on Earth, time recorded will be more than 20 years or it will be less than 20 years, right? So you need to figure out exactly what will be the proper time interval and what will be the improper time interval in this scenario. Now let's analyze it. The event that you need to find out is that the starship is passing Earth. That is your event and it records the time. So let's say there is this starship. More like a UFO. It is passing Earth at a speed of root 3 by 2 times the speed of light. I have purposely taken good values in order to make the calculations more easy so that you understand the concept. So this is moving at a speed of root 3 by 2 times the speed of light. Now the person inside this is having a clock which is using some sort of arithmetic so that it can calculate the time in years. Okay, usually clocks calculate the time in hours or in minutes. So this clock is calculating time in years, let's say, and he records 20 years have been passed since he has moved away from Earth, and you need to figure out whether the Earth has aged more than 20 years or it has aged less than 20 years. So when he will travel the distance, since he is traveling, that means he will cover some distance, right? So when he is covering the distance, he has only one clock in his hand, right? There is only one clock in his hand which is enough to define both these events. That means he is in a proper time interval because there is only requirement of one clock, not requirement of more than one clock, right? That is the mnemonic which I had told you to remember about this, that if you are using only one clock to determine your events, that means you are moving in a proper time interval, right? So your proper time interval is given to be 20 years. Let's say T naught is your proper time interval given to be 20 years, and you need to figure out T dash, that is the time passed on Earth. So obviously T dash will be greater than T naught because there is a factor of gamma attached to it. So T dash equal to gamma T naught. This is your time dilation equation. So right now you need to figure out gamma. You have T naught. T dash will be more than gamma. That means Earth has aged, or Earth has the time on Earth has passed more than that of 20 years. Exactly how much? We need to calculate gamma. So let's calculate gamma. Gamma is 1 upon under root of 1 minus speed, that is v by c whole square. Now your v is given to be root 3 by 2 times the speed of light. So let's calculate gamma by that. 1 upon under root of 1 minus v is root 3 by 2 times the speed of light divided by the speed of light. So your speed of light get cancelled, and this turns out to be 1 minus 1/4. 1 minus 1/4. 1 minus, sorry, 3/4. So 4 minus 3, 1, 1/4. That means your gamma will turn out to be 2. Your gamma is given to be 2. Obviously gamma will be greater than 1. So your T dash will be, gamma is given to be twice, so 2 times years that have been passed, proper time interval. So that will be 40 years. That means while recording these events, if the starship travels a time of 20 years, the Earth might have aged 40 years, twice the time, right? So indeed time dilation works. You can check this example out. You can even try it yourself. Now let us talk about other kinematical consequences that you will observe other than time dilation. So the second kinematical consequence that you will observe is the relativity in simultaneity. Relativity in simultaneity. Now what this usually states is that if you are in a reference frame, let's say at rest, if you are in a frame which is at rest with respect to two events, let's say event E1 and event E2, and you are at rest with respect to them, and you observe that both of them occur at the same time to you. For example, two lightning bolts, E1 and the other lightning bolt which is denoted by event E2, and you are standing exactly in between them. Then you will observe that both of them occur at the same place to you, and you will say that I am in between both of these events, so they are occurring midway to me, and they are occurring at the same place. They are occurring at the same time. They are occurring at the same time because speed of lightning bolts travel by the speed of light, so they will occur at the same time to me. But let's say you are another observer in a reference frame which is moving relative to the ground frame and at speeds higher and closer to the speed of light, approximately the speed of light, and the event E1 is occurring and event E2. Now, will you observe both of them in the same way as the observer 1 observed them? So, in general, you will not observe them to occur in the same time, right? Because since you are moving at high speeds, this wavefront, this lightning bolt, which is creating a wavefront, will occur to you first. Then this lightning bolt will occur you afterwards, right? Because you are moving at very high speeds. So this is what is the relativity in simultaneity. Two events are simultaneous or may be simultaneous in another frame. They may not be, or they are actually not simultaneous in another frame. This is what relativity of simultaneity states. So why is this not relatable to us? Why do we not experience the relativity in simultaneity? Because we are not moving at very high speeds. Again, the same reason. We are not moving at very high speeds. Our speed is 20 meters per second, 30 meters per second, at max 120 kilometers per hour. But this can be observed only when you are moving at very high speeds. Right? It's a rather strange outcome because there are two contradictory results that are happening, although both of them are equally valid. Because for observer 1, it is true that both the events are occurring at the same time, but for observer 2, event 1 is occurring first and then event 2. So do we say that one is correct and the other is wrong? No, we state that both of them are equally valid and both of them are equally true. If you might have realized that there is another example which can explain the relativity in simultaneity, and that example is Doppler effect. If you might have come across this in your 12th standard physics, that Doppler effect is basically when, let's say, a source and an observer, let's say there is a source which is emitting sound waves at a certain frequency, let's say f, then it is not necessary that this observer will also record the frequency of this source to be f if he is moving at relative speeds, if they are both in a relative reference frame, right? So here also observations are changing because the frequency of the sound emitted by the source depends on the relative velocity in both of these source and observer, right? So Doppler effect is the best example of relativity in simultaneity. Although relativity in simultaneity holds for light, Doppler effect holds for sound. So now let's talk about the relativity of length. So now, as you might have guessed, that since time gets dilated as you move through higher speeds, length is the factor that should also dilate or constrict, right? So it is proven, and we will also prove it later, that length will get constricted as we move towards with higher speeds, right? So if we move with higher speeds, length will get contracted, right? Contracted is the correct word for length. We will also prove it now how it will get contracted. For example, now as length can be anything, right? Length can be the length of a rod, right? The length of a rod, or it can also be some distance between two train stations, for example. This can also be a length, right? This can also be a length. Now what happens while you find out about length is that length can be found out if consider this scenario that I am at rest and I am measuring the length of a railway station. let's say this is the length of a railway station. Can I measure it? Yes, I can measure it. What I will do, let's say the train station is spread only in the x direction, right? So I don't have to care about the y and the z coordinates. So what I'll do, I will take a meter scale or a meter tape, and I will note this point. Let's say it is XA. XA is the x coordinate of the first train station, and let's say the another coordinate, that is the final coordinate of the train station, is XB. So my length will be XB minus XA, right? Clear till here? It will be XB minus XA. Now what happens is that as I move in a reference frame which is moving at some speed v, as I move in a reference frame which is moving with a speed v, then the train station which is at rest appears to me to be moving at a speed v with respect to me, right? If I observe this train station T1, T2, this train station, or the distance between the train stations at rest, and I am myself moving with a speed v, that means I will observe the train station to be moving with speed v towards me, right? This is with respect to my frame which is moving at speed v. So what will happen is that if I denote one position XA, the other position would have moved a distance, some distance, it would have covered some distance, T2 dash, let's say, and it would have moved in front. That means if I denote this to be XB, it will be a wrong measurement. It will not be called a length. So what should I do? So I have to denote each position simultaneously as it is moving. For example, in the case of a rod, and I am denoting XA, and as it is moving with speed v, let's say it moves some distance, right? And this is the new position of the rod. This is the new position. That means if this is my new position, then this has to be my original position, XB dash. This has to be my new length. And it is proven that if this is XA and this is XB, then XB minus XA, if it is length, will not be equal to XB dash minus XA dash. That means the new length of the rod will not be equal to the original length. That means length has been goofed up. Length has been goofed up. It either has to be contracted or it has to be dilated. So what exactly should it be? We will derive it out mathematically. So now let's talk about how we get into the proof of how we can find out whether the length has been contracted or it has been expanded. So one thing that you need to remember, that the relativity of length, it is a direct consequence of time dilation. Relativity in length is a direct consequence of time dilation. That means we are going to use the time dilation equation in order to prove that whether length has contracted or expanded. And as I stated you earlier, length will be contracted. So let's move on into the proof of whether length has been contracted or dilated. So now consider the same scenario that we used for time dilation in order to prove the time dilation equation. Is that, let's say you are in a reference frame which is at rest, okay, and let's say we talk about distance in terms of length, since I told you that distance can also be length, right? So let's say there is a train station T1 and there is another train station, let's say T2, right? The proper length, as I would say, as there is proper time, as there is the concept of proper time, same is the concept of proper length. Proper length is when you measure it at rest frame, right? Because the length which you measure at rest frame will be the proper length or the correct length that you will measure. It will not have any errors. If you measure it at high speeds, it will have some errors. So it will not be a proper length, it would be an improper length. Okay, so let's consider that this is the proper length and it is L0. Just like delta T0 for proper time interval, same for proper length L0, right? And there are two clocks at the train station, T equal to 0. There is another clock at the train station, T equal to delta T dash. Why will it be delta T dash? Because once I observe it from the rest frame, I will say that in the rest frame I have to use two clocks configured in such a way that they record the proper time, right? So if I am using more than one clock, that means it is an improper time interval. That means this observer, let's say O1, is recording an improper time interval but a proper length, right? It is recording an improper time interval because it has two clocks. He is reading the clocks which are placed at the train station. So there will be a requirement of more than one clock because he is not moving in a relative frame, right? So he is in an improper time interval. So according to this guy, if I write the speed equal to distance traveled upon time taken, or distance equal to speed into time. So the proper length, that is your proper distance, equal to speed. Let's say the speed that he observes is v times the time. Now the time will be the dilated time, right? Improper time. So delta t dash. This is your first equation. Second equation will be obtained when you move an observer in a relative frame with speed v. He is on a trolley. He wants to measure the train station and he is moving with a speed v. So according to his observation, he will observe that the train station is moving towards him with a speed v, right? And since this speed v is very large and closer to the speed of light, that's why he will observe the length to be dilated, length to be contracted or expanded. Okay. Now he will observe that the train station is moving towards him with a speed v, right? This is according to the observation made in the reference frame O2. Okay. Now he has to carry only one clock. He has to carry only one clock because he will say that I do not need to observe these both clocks placed at the train station since I am moving in only one reference frame. That means I have to carry only one clock in order to note my time interval. So he will go and he will record this position with his clock, and then he'll go to the second position and then he'll record the length, right? So let's say the length that he records is L dash, right? The improper length, because he is saying that the length has to be different. He will not observe the correct length of the train station because he is moving in a relative frame with speed v. So length equal to speed into now time. The time interval will be a proper time interval since he has only one clock with him, right? So delta t naught. Equation 2. Now what are we going to do? We are going to divide this equation so the v term gets cancelled out. So dividing 1 by 2. So L naught upon L dash equal to, speed gets cancelled, delta t dash upon delta t naught. Okay. Now let us take L dash on that side. So L dash equal to L naught times delta t naught upon delta t dash. Going to use the time dilation equation which I am going to write here. So that according to the time dilation equation, delta t dash equal to gamma times delta t naught, where delta t dash is the improper time interval and delta t naught is the proper time interval. Improper time interval is greater than the proper time interval by a factor of gamma. Gamma is greater than 1. So from here I can also write that delta t naught upon delta t dash. What will be delta t naught upon delta t dash? It will be 1 upon gamma, right? So now I use this to put it in this equation. So L dash equal to L naught times delta t naught upon delta t dash is 1 by gamma. So L naught by gamma is L dash. So the recorded length is smaller than the proper length. The recorded length is smaller than the proper length by a factor of gamma. Hence, length is contracted. Length is contracted. Length is contracted by a factor of gamma. Gamma is again, as you know, 1 upon under root of 1 minus speed square upon c square, speed of light square. And L dash is the improper length, that is the length which you will observe in a reference frame which is moving with speed v, right? Improper length. And L naught is the proper length. Length that you will observe in the rest frame, which will be the correct length without any errors, right? So this is how you derive the relativity of length and how length is contracted. That means length is contracted and time is dilated.